I find it very interesting how the rich and the poor, no matter how far apart they seem, each have a desire to be rich. The rich want to get richer, the poor don't want to stay poor. They want to be able to have money, they want to be able to be rich. And I think of two lessons that when incorporated together come up with one principle. The lesson of belief and the lesson of action, which incorporate to the principle of faith. Now, when I think of faith, I think of back in First Timothy in the Bible where it says faith without works is dead. When I think of faith, I think about faithful in a relationship. When I think of faith, I think of, what is faith? Well, faith is the belief that you can achieve something. But just like the poor and the rich, you can't just believe it. You got to take action on it. And so I think about how do we break these two down to make them more applicable into our lives? Belief. What is belief? A thing that we believe is simply a thought that we think true. So when we think about if we're confident or shy, if we're extrovert or introvert, if we're spiritual, if we are super fit, if we are an entrepreneur or a low life lazy bum or whatever it may be. We have these titles, we have these thoughts that come into our minds, and the ones that stay are the ones that we believe in, that we simply think are truth. Are they necessarily truth? A lot of times, no. But because we think that they're true and the way that we've conditioned ourselves, that's what we get from our belief. Now, when I also think of belief, I think of how can we change that? And that goes into the other lesson of action. But before I touch on action, confidence goes into us believing in ourselves. I know as a super shy and introvert, right? That was my belief as a teenager. Shy and introverted throughout middle school and throughout high school, that I was just going to be not a non-talker. I'm going to not voice my opinion. And I just am not a person with confidence. And what I love is a quote from Alex Hormozy, which is you don't get confident by shouting affirmations in the mirror. You get confident by having an undeniable stack of proof that you are who you say that you are. And I love that because it's not only about telling yourself that you're that person, telling yourself that you're going to get there. The rich and the poor, they can both tell themselves they're going to be there. But that's not only what gets the result. So let's jump over that second side, the action part. Why is it so important to have the action in faith and in beliefs? Well, because without action, we're just dreamers. We're just wishers. I could tell you a decade ago, I was a dreamer and a wisher. I came up with so many different ideas. Like I came up with what I called the winged plate, which if you think of buffets or family reunions where they have this massive spread of food on the table, you start going through the line, you grab your plate and you start piling on the food and you get about halfway and that you look down. You look down that table and you see so many you see some jellos, you see the dessert table is at the end because obviously you gotta apparently have salad and dinner before your dessert and just so much good stuff, but your plate is full. And so what do? You can grab another plate, which just gets everywhere. You might get stains on your shirt, you might drop everything. Or you just like sacrifice all the good stuff at the end and sit down at your table. But no, I had this idea of taking a plate and on the bottom had a plate that swung out, sat on your arm. So you had an extra plate that was balanced and you can get that dessert. You can grab that jello. You can grab that the goodness, what am I thinking? It's like that pink fluff with like marshmallows and whipped cream. You stack that on your plate as well. Like I also had the invention of it was called Willie's waffles and frozen yogurt. mixing waffles and frozen yogurt together. I had a journal just full of ideas. But that's all they were ideas. And if I learned anything, it's that a thought is worth every thought is worth a dime. No, a dozen. I'm just going to screw up that quote. Uh, Basically, a dozen thoughts is worth a dime. And I know it's phrased a different way, but when it's broken down to every thought we have is worth less than a penny. And the only way to change that is to take action on it. And so after, a decade ago, having those invention ideas all the way up, zoom to just a few years ago, they were just wishes, they were just dreams. And up to a few years ago, then I started taking action. I started taking action on wanting to be a speaker. I started taking action on wanting to be an author, taking action on wanting to goodness gracious, get healthy and to get my financials up and learn sales and have this wonderful mindset to be the next Tony Robbins, which is, always a little ego boost there for myself. But it's the action side. It's the action side that took that value of less than a penny to then earn more. And so it's closing that gap. And this is the lesson I learned, is that the thought that you have when it comes to the action of doing something towards that goal, the ultra successful, not talking about regular people or normal people. I'm not talking about the ones who do some things, the above average people. I'm talking about the champions, the legends, the high performers and achievers. That distance between the thought and action item, they will decrease it to where something that might take someone a month to achieve, they'll try to do it in a day. And just that time of doing it in a day, then they go to the next task the next day. And so by the time that most people are able to do one thing in a month, they're already knocked down to 30, 31 different things. And it accelerates that growth. So it's closing that distance in between. One of the things that I've done from that thought to action was when Alex Hormozy, again, wonderful guy. I swear he's not the only person I'll talk about, is breaking down, he calls it the 100 rule, where it's just every day do 100 calls, 100 messages, 100 push-ups, whatever it may be. Don't do things in like ones or twos, do things in hundreds. And he set out this video of contacting 100 people a day. And if you do that for 30 days, that there's no chance that you're not going to get a call, get your first paying client. And so me being a coach, I tried it out. So I went over to the university that's next to me, sat down. I had like 6 to 8 hours to be able to knock out some stuff, and I started messaging. And that day I messaged 100 people. I thought, this is pretty cool. I took immediate action and I felt so good about it. Then the next day, went to the same place, 100 people I was able to message. And I thought, this is pretty easy. The next day after that, I realized that it wasn't so easy, because not only was I needing to contact 100 new people, but the 100, 200 people that I contacted before, the ones who messaged me back, I needed to keep a conversation with them. And so it became really hard to be able to manage that. However, I was still able to get it done. So I committed and I was able to hit that 500. Now, from that, I either need a system or something to be able to do that again. But the coolest part was I got on, I think it was 12 to 15 phone calls and video calls with leads, prospective people, and I was able to close my first paying client within 5 days. 5 days, I was able to go from not really doing anything, having a distance between the thought and the action, to then having my first paying client. When we talk about belief, and we talk about action, which then leads to that principle of having faith in ourselves. It's to have that confidence of undeniable proof that we are who we say we are. And we do that by just small, simple steps to get to where we need to go. Now, I know for a lot of you, you might think, well, Willie, that's great. But I got this challenge, I got this hurdle, I got this obstacle in my way. Well, let me tell you this. From personal experience of someone who has a family with wonderful young kids, who is also trying to be an entrepreneur, who's trying to also provide for his family, I learned that it took me 5 years to make my first call, to make my first message. But it took me 5 minutes to then make the second one. And I think we get in our heads that we think that the whole point is that we have to create a perfect moment for us to get things done. When in reality, the hardest part is just taking the first step. And so let me leave you with a challenge to make a stack of undeniable proof and evidence and experience for yourself. Because when you do that, then you get that confidence inside of you to be able to do what you say you're going to do. And that when people come at you with their opinions, that you can just knock away saying, that's not me. What are you talking about? If someone says, I hate your blue hair, and your hair is brown or black, you're just like, okay. And you're able to shrug it off. You're able to shrug it off because it's not a part of you. So that person who you want to be, if you want that self-identity, then start building that stack and start going slowly and slowly. I know for myself, I have a little poundage. I have a little built-in coat in my wonderful gut. And just slowly but surely, I'm working it down. I start with 10,000 steps. Then I added on a gallon of water a day. Then I added on getting bed by 10:30 because I was falling asleep at like midnight or 1 o'clock. Goodness gracious. And it was slowly but surely that those goals that I had that felt impossible then became my standards. And so by those simple, small steps, you can build faith in yourself through that power of faith. You can believe in yourself more and you can take more action. Because a person with an experience is never at the mercy of a person with an opinion. So build that experience, build that evidence, stack it up, and you'll realize that you are way more than you think you are. You just got to take the small steps to get there.